Good morning, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. I am Mikey Camille WS1, your news reporter for today, and this is Educational News. For today's news, because DepEd slowly adopting the new normal, we will know the status of implementing limited face-to-face classes in school, and because we are talking about the educational informations, we would like to know the application of classical and operant conditioning concepts in facilitating a learner-centered classroom from different teachers. Live in Matanag, Banbantayan, Cebu, Ms. Grizel Soko. Ms. Grizel, please.
So yes, Mikey, today we were going to ask a teacher about the status of implementing the limited face-to-face classes in their school. Connecting in our line is Mrs. Evelyn D. Albillar, a grade 7 teacher from Bateria National High School. Good morning, ma'am. So if you don't mind, I would like to ask some questions regarding the status of implementing the limited face-to-face classes in your school. How was it? And since you are in a long-term doing this service, may we know about the application of classical and operant conditioning concepts in teaching learner-centered classroom?
Good morning. Before I'm going to answer your questions with regards to the face-to-face classes, let me read first the content of this memorandum. As given by the President's approval of the recommendation of this progressive expansion of face-to-face classes, Secretary Bunes has authorized all the regional directors to commence the progressive expansion phase of face-to-face classes for both public and private schools. Now, as to facilitate the delivery of teaching and learning process, teachers must have to plan everything so that learning would be possible. Your first question: what is the status of your school in implementing limited face-to-face classes? Well, the status of our school in implementing with this limited face-to-face classes is not quite that easy, since we need to follow all the guidelines in implementing the safety protocols. Well, in fact, our learners are not that robot. However, we need to implement these with all the cares in order to give learning to our students wholeheartedly. Second question: how do you apply classical conditioning concepts in facilitating a learner-centered classroom? Well, I apply classical conditioning through creating a positive classroom environment to help students overcome anxiety from this pandemic, just like wearing a mask, putting up signages, giving of alcohol, and even an orientation on how the act inside a classroom should be favorable so that learning would be possible despite the pandemic. Your second question for number 2: how do you apply operant conditioning concept in facilitating a learner-centered classroom? Well, I facilitate a learning-centered classroom through reinforcing students to follow such protocols voluntarily, and of course, I give them feedbacking about their behavior, and if ever they got mistakes, keep on repeating. I always remind them to follow this until they need to learn all those things so that there is a smooth selling delivery of the lesson.
Thank you, ma'am, for your time and effort in participating in our show despite your hectic schedule. That would be all for our news report for today. I am Grizel Isoko, reporting from Bateria. Back to you, Miss Mikey.
Thank you for that fresh and informative news, Grizel. Now, let us move on to Miss Hannah Joy Sumalino, live in Medellin, Cebu. Hannah Joy, please.
Yes, Miss Mikey, good morning. Regarding to your concern about the implementation of limited face-to-face classes and the application of classical and operant conditioning concepts in facilitating a learner-centered classroom, connecting in our line is Miss Annalyn O. Abenido, a grade 11 teacher. Good morning, ma'am. Because we are adopting the new normal, we would like to know the status of implementing the limited face-to-face classes in your school. How was it? Okay, and because you are in a long term doing this service, may we know about the application of classical and operant conditioning concepts in facilitating a learner-centered classroom, ma'am?
What is the status of implementing limited face-to-face classes in our school? So in our school, the status in implementing the limited face-to-face is still quite complicated, and we are still in the process of observation, adjustments, but we are doing our best to cater the safety of the students while giving the best learning they need. So the next question is, how do you apply the classical and operant conditioning concepts in facilitating a learner-centered classroom? So when we say of operant conditioning, the learner is also rewarded with incentives, while classical conditioning involves no such. So in my case, as a senior high school teacher, I apply mostly the concepts of classical conditioning because my students are already aware those consequences if they will not perform the particular task. But sometimes I also used the operant one during my motivation, but most of the time I apply the classical one.
Thank you, ma'am. That would be all for my news report for today. I am Hannah Sumalinov, your news reporter from in Cebu. Back to you, Miss Mikey.
Thank you, Miss Hannah Joy. Now, it is clear for us the status of the implementation of limited face-to-face classes and the application of classical and operant conditioning concepts in facilitating a learner-centered classroom. I hope that we gained a lot of educational news for today. God bless everyone. This is Micah Milsuwan, your news reporter from Tindog, Midilian, Cebu. And this is Educational News.